why women in medicine need strategy. We're going to talk about the reality of women being in medicine, the reality of navigating a medical career, trying to have a family, trying to have a life outside of medicine and not being constantly burned out. That reality is something we don't talk about. We talk about hustle culture. We talk about being a superwoman. We talk about learning to manage your time. Nobody talks about why the actual culture, the workplace, the way it's designed, why it makes it impossible for us to do the both together. That's why when we hear people who want to have a big family or advance in their careers and be competitive, we say it's counterintuitive. It can't be done. It's going to be difficult. Yes, we know that, but why? Right? There is something about the system. There's something about the way it's designed that makes it impossible. So unless we understand that, unless we understand how the system actually functions and what we can do to change it, we're just going to be doing the same thing. So if you want to advance your career, if you want to go into a competitive field like surgery or anything procedural, anything that requires call, if you want to have a family while you pursue your medical career, if you want to advance in your career, what you have to do is completely different than what your male colleagues have to do. This is the picture that we're given. We are told that we are on a level playing field. We're told when you go into medicine, when you're going up the career ladder, you have the same opportunities. You're navigating the same exact workplace as your male colleagues. You have no challenges to overcome, right? You go into the workplace, you work really hard, you prove yourself, and you are recognized. Your work is recognized. Your effort is recognized. Your achievements are recognized, right? And so what we do is we go in there, we work twice as hard. That is the most common career advice we're given as women, right? As people of color, as Muslim women, as mothers, we are told work twice as hard to overcome any of the obstacles that you're going to face, to overcome any of the challenges that you're going to face, and you should succeed. That is the guarantee that we're given almost, right? But what happens when you do that? What happens when you work twice as hard? You get into your career, you overcome all the challenges, you do all the things that you're supposed to do, and it's not what you expected, right? You're not getting the flexibility that you need. You're working all kinds of hours. You're getting burned out. You ask for flexibility and it doesn't come. The schedule is what it is. It's not made flexible for mothers. It's not flexible for if you need to go take care of aging parents or any other thing that come along. So when you ask for flexibility, you don't get it. What happens? You keep working, keep proving yourself, hoping flexibility comes, and it still doesn't come. Majority of the women in medicine are leaving because of that. I did that almost. I almost walked away from a career I spent 15 years building because there was no other way to do. How do you do all the things and the answer is still the same? You're not getting the same opportunities. You're too exhausted to even pursue those other opportunities. You're too exhausted to pursue a promotion, pursue a pay raise. So what do? We end up leaving. That's what's happening. Women are leaving the workforce or working part-time after building a career for 10, 15 years. Okay. What is the reality? This is the reality that we're facing. The reality is we're not on a level playing field. The career ladder is not the same. We are navigating a broken career ladder. The opportunities are not the same. The workplace hostility that comes with it, the bias, the discrimination, the sexism, the Islamophobia, the pregnancy discrimination. The number of times I've been told to quit just because I happened to become pregnant, just because I happen to prioritize motherhood. This is the reality. The reality is you are not on a level playing field. The reality is you are not navigating the same workplace. You're not facing the same challenges. And so working twice as hard doesn't overcome this. Working to optimize your time management doesn't overcome this. And it's not just a broken career ladder. This guy's career ladder goes all the way to the top. It's sturdy. It's not broken. Yours is broken and it can't even make it to the top. Your path to leadership isn't as laid out, isn't as clear as your colleagues, as the people who have networks and connections. And on top of that, if you're a woman who wants to have children, who wants to have a family, you have the extra added burden of caring for them. Childcare. Whether you negotiate it or not, a lot of the times it's up to you. Even with as supportive a husband as you can have, you're still doing the majority thinking and planning and making sure that your kids are being taken care of. The household, the cleaning, that's another full-time job that you're holding on to because society never changed to divide labor. But we're supposed to work twice as hard to overcome that. That's why that doesn't work, because there are underlying beliefs, there are underlying social norms and expectations, gendered roles. Working twice as hard doesn't overcome that. Time management doesn't overcome that. Being disciplined doesn't overcome that. On top of all of this, there's an anchor here. It's on the ground, a heavy anchor that is tied around that woman's ankle. That represents the social rules that we follow. As a woman advances in her career, she's getting out of her gendered role what she is supposed to do, what she is expected to do. As you advance your career, there are consequences. There's strained marriages, there's health risks. The more women advance in their career, the more they burn out. Women are retiring at much earlier ages than their male colleagues because we are exhausted and we are getting burned out. So as women in medicine, we need career strategy. I get a lot of messages from women who tell me, put my career on hold because of motherhood. I left my career because of motherhood. A lot of surgical trainees are leaving their training because of bias, racism, and discrimination. It's reality. We have data showing that there is increased attrition of Black and brown residents leaving their training because of bias and discrimination. It's data. You can argue with me all you want, but you can't argue with data, right? And so unless we address this, the whole idea of recruiting more diversity into a workplace that isn't designed for them is not the answer. I have changed how I mentor. I have changed how I coach because telling people to work twice as hard in a system that is rigged against them, it's not a strategy. It's setting people up to burn out more, and that doesn't work. So we need strategy. And this is why. Discipline. You have all the discipline in the world. You're going into medicine. Talk about delayed gratification. After college, after your classmates go and get well-paying jobs, you're going to go into more debt. You go to medical school, you go to residency, you go to fellowship. You don't have a discipline problem. You don't have a time management problem. You know how to manage your time. You're studying all hours of the day. You've studied for multiple years to become a doctor. You don't have motivation problem. You don't have discipline problem. You don't have time management problem. What you have is a strategy problem. Nobody prepares you for the workplace that you're walking into. A workplace that doesn't value your health and your well-being, doesn't value your values, what's important to you. So unless you know that going in, unless you are fully aware of the reality that you're walking into, you're walking in blindly. You're navigating things blindly and you're learning the hard way. So what we need to do is to do things differently, right? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, right? I've done it for multiple years. So I'm here to tell you, please don't do that. You can navigate your career strategically. You don't have to walk in blindly, navigate blindly, and learn things the hard way. There's a question, how do I manage children while taking call? I do have support, but a lot of times it seems that I don't get much rest after a long shift. This is what we call the second shift. There's a lot of research that actually look at this. It has a name, this entity. It's called the second shift. You work full time, you come home, and there's no resting. If you have children, there's no resting, right? I go home, I relax, I recover, and now I come back to work. That does not exist for moms. You come home to an entire second shift. The cooking and the cleaning and the putting kids to bed and checking homework and this and that. That's an entire second shift. And that's something that our society hasn't changed for hundreds of years. Women have been in the workforce for hundreds of years. Things have not changed. We just expected women to do both. And for doing both, we gave them this awesome title and we called them superwomen, right? And we made it a badge of honor. And so for wearing that badge of honor, we burned out, and that's the price that we pay, right? Nobody has changed anything to say, okay, you're working full time. This other full-time job that you had, it's not working. So how can we have division of labor? That has never happened, right? But for doing both, we got called superwomen. And so we become superwomen until we burn out. That is not just something that happens in your home. This is a societal problem. Even the most supportive husband, he may physically help you, but psychologically, all the other things that you have to do, it's still on your plate. You're still the one having to organize and do all of this. It takes a lot more than managing your time and doing a little bit of self-care because you're going to go back and do that again. That is the unlearning that you have to do. That is the bigger strategy that you have to learn. How do you uncouple this? How do you verbalize the fact that this is not conducive to you thriving in your career and succeeding? That is the conversation that needs to be had at a much deeper level. So the strategies that I suggest, there's 3 steps. Number 1 is you have to understand the systems that you're navigating. And those systems are not just the workplace. The workplace culture is one aspect. What I just talked about, your home, your community, the society that you're navigating. Those are all the systems that make it impossible for women to do both. You're expected to have 2 full-time jobs and excel at both. So you have to understand that system and why it expects you to do that. Once you understand that, there's a hidden curriculum that governs all of this. This is something we've been taught from early on. It's called the hidden curriculum. And it's called the hidden curriculum because we all follow it unknowingly, but we don't understand it. You have to uncover that. And once you uncover that hidden curriculum, then you stop coping. The whole self-care, time management, wellness, yoga, All of those things are coping mechanisms. You cope and then you come back and do the same thing over and over and over again. You burn out again. So you have to stop coping and you have to start strategizing. And that strategy is what we call the defiant career strategy that teaches you all of this. It teaches you the underlying system, how the system works, how the workplace works, how society works, why it's taken 100 years for the workplace here in the US to recognize that women who give birth are going to lactate and they go back to work because there is no maternity leave policy. And so they need facility to pump milk. It took over 100 years. I think it was like 120 years. So you have to understand that. And that's just one fact. Once you understand how the system works, how society works, what you're expected to do, the disproportionate expectation for you to excel at two things. Once you understand that, you understand the hidden curriculum. What rules am I following inadvertently that are making me do these things? And once you understand that, then you stop coping and you start strategizing. And that's what the Defiant Career Strategy will teach you and help you do. You can schedule a call with me to join our next cohort of the Defiant Career Strategy. Those are the three things that you have to do. You have to understand how the system actually functions. You have to understand the hidden curriculum. It governs you whether you know it or not. It governs you whether you listen to it or not, right? Other people apply it to you, you follow it unknowingly. That's why it's called a hidden curriculum. Everything that we tell women to do, time management, discipline, go get self-care, do some yoga, get a massage, all those things are good, but they're coping mechanisms. They're used to deal with the stress and the aches and pains that come from doing two full-time jobs, right? They're good, but they don't fix anything. You go back to the same work situation, you go back to the same home situation, you're still carrying the same expectations that you're being held to, you still have the same mom guilt. One of the things that I did when I was navigating this is I looked at a lot of leadership books, a lot of career books. One of the biggest ones is Lean In. It tells you to do the same thing over and over and over. It tells you lean into the workplace. Basically, keep working twice as hard, keep proving that you belong, and then wait to be given opportunities, wait to be given flexibility, wait to be given chances. That does not work. I can tell you from experience, I can tell you from the women that I work with, working twice as hard is not a strategy. Proving yourself over and over in a system that doesn't recognize your work is not a strategy. This is the reality that we're navigating. You're not on a level playing field. You're not navigating the same career ladder as your colleagues, as your male colleagues. Basically, at work, you're expected to compete as if you don't have responsibilities at home. And at home, you're expected to function as if you don't have a job. Two full-time jobs, and you're expected to excel at both. It is humanly impossible. That's why they call it superwoman, right? You're being a superwoman when you try and do both. I don't claim to be a superwoman. I don't want to be a superwoman. Trying to be burned me out. And it is not something that we should be striving to. What we should be striving to is to say, this is unreasonable, it is impossible, and we should stop that expectation. And how do you do that? Without burning yourself out, without putting a big target on your back at work, without causing strains in your relationships. That's the other thing that happens. As soon as a woman sets a boundary, it creates problems. People don't like it when women set boundaries. The boundaries that I teach are called defiant boundaries. They're boundaries that nobody can question. My sister, one time, I remember her calling me and saying, Kylie, I don't understand how certain things people will come to me and ask me, but they don't even call you. They don't even think about asking you. You set defiant boundaries so that people know, okay, that's her limit. She's not going to do this, and that. Okay. And that boundary is not just at work. It is everywhere. And you can do it without causing strains in your relationship, without putting a big target on your back at work. What do women do when they're so overwhelmed at work? They take it home with them, right? You're home, you're charting, you're writing your notes, you're responding to messages. Your work belongs at work. Home is for you and your family. You have to be able to create that division. And that takes skill, and skills are learnable. So book a strategy call with me. It's 45 minutes. We'll go over what's going on in your career, what's holding you back, and what you need to do to gain the clarity that you need so that you can take that next step. Okay. How can I study with 3 kids? Systems. You got to have systems. If you have support, you can create systems. I'm going to tell you a story. When I was a resident, so there's this in-training exams that we take. They're called ABSITEs for us, American Board of Surgery in-training examination. We take it every year to figure out how prepared for your board certification you are. And my first year, I bombed. That was the only year I didn't have a child. I bombed. Like, I would come home, try and study. I was so exhausted, I would just pass out. And then I had a kid. I said, oh my God, I'm going to fail out of this training. The second year, something happened. My score went up. I had my second child and my score went up again. I had a third child. My score went up again. My chief year, I think I had one of the highest grades, to the point where they asked me to teach other residents how to study. They asked me, how the heck are you studying, and how the heck are your grades getting better with more kids? Literally, the more kids I had, the more disciplined I was, the better I did. If you had told me that before then, I tell you that's crazy. Right? And what happens is, actually, when you are focused and you have a lot of things going on, the unimportant stuff falls off your plate and you get focused. But you have to be able to know how to do that. How do you get focused, and how do you ignore things? How do you decline things like crazy? These are the defiant boundaries that I teach. How do you set that boundary to say, nope, that's not important, this is important, and you focus. And when you focus, there's a time strategy that I teach that's part of our defiant career strategy. That is, what is the minimum amount of things that you have to do to accomplish the most? I did two crazy things at the same time. I was training to be a surgeon, and I was studying like crazy and getting really good scores and doing better and better and better on my exams, right? And at the same time, I was having kids. And I made it a point to, when I come home, I didn't study at home. I would come home and it would be like baby time, right? And fun time. So it is absolutely doable, and you will be surprised at how much you can achieve when you focus and you block out all the unimportant things. Okay. I was told the exact opposite. I was told it's impossible, you can't do it. And I said, okay, let me see how I can do this. My personal experience and the experiences of the women that I work with is that when you block out all the distractions, when you put up those defiant boundaries, you can accomplish crazy things. Okay. But you have to be able to do that. You have to be able to put up that solid boundary and say, no, I'm not doing this. Okay. I said, I love what you teach. I'm not married yet. My question is how to navigate the change, because I really wish to be present mom and wife without burnout. Absolutely. You have to be prepared for that. I was not prepared for that. That's the transition that I have made in my teaching and my coaching and everything. If you are going into medicine, if you're studying medicine, you don't need motivation. You don't need inspiration. You don't need time management. You already have those things. You already have a lot of those things. You are doing one of the hardest things on earth. You're pursuing medicine. Your classmates graduated and are making money. You're not doing that. You're saying, I'm going to spend more time in school. I'm going to study some more. You signed up for delayed gratification. So you don't need time management. You don't need discipline. You don't need any of that. What you need is the strategy to say, how do I do this better? How do I optimize my career without compromising my family? That is the strategy that we need. And unfortunately, that is the strategy nobody teaches. Right? I've been to so many women in medicine conferences, coaching sessions, and they tell you, you need confidence. I'm like, I have confidence. Like, I'm a surgeon. I'm good. I have confidence. How do I do this differently? How do I not take my work home, be at work and worried about what's going on at home? That's different. The boundaries that I set at work need to be solid. How do I do that? I can have all the confidence in the world. If I can't set a boundary, it means nothing. We're here to do things differently. There's no point in motivating people to go into medicine if they're going to get burned out. To me, that doesn't make any sense. So what we do is navigate the world differently, because you have to be realistic. The reality that you're navigating as a woman in medicine is completely different than your male colleagues. Unless we are realistic and are operating in the real world and seeing, hey, I'm up against something different. Someone climbing a perfectly sturdy ladder and they know exactly where they're going. I remember being a pre-med and having a classmate saying he knew exactly where he wanted to be 20 years down the line. He wanted to be a chairman of a department of a specific hospital. He knew that far ahead where his career was going to go. And I was figuring out MCAT. What's that? Right? What comes after the MCAT? So we have to do things completely differently. Rose says, what about the challenge of hierarchy in medicine? We talk about that. Absolutely. That's the one thing that I couldn't find anybody talking about. One of the most harmful pieces of advice that women in medicine get, especially women of color, is speak up, advocate for yourself, go to HR. Do you know what that does when you're the only person there, when you're the only person of color, when you're the only Black person, when you're the only hijabi? It puts a bigger target on your back. You become, the target of retaliation. Nobody tells you that. Nobody understands the hierarchy of medicine. So we talk about the hierarchy of medicine, and depending on where you are, what position you are, how do you advocate for yourself without risking the career that you're building? One of my students, she was a medical student at the time when she joined our program. She was getting bullied every day in the operating room for wearing a hijab. I taught her how the system actually works, the hierarchy, the risks, power structures, how to navigate it strategically. Not only did she stop getting bullied, she changed the entire hospital system's policy. They sent her an email saying, hey, these are the actions that we're taking to accommodate you wearing a hijab in the operating room. We've bought this not only for this hospital, but for an entire hospital system. They taught their staff to respect the hijab and to whoever else comes after her. So it's not only her. We're not fixing the problem for her. Anybody else who comes after her, the hospital is now prepared, right? And she was a medical student at the lower end of the totem pole being bullied by surgeons. And she learned how to not only speak up for herself, stop the bullying, change hospital system, protect herself, graduate, and go into a residency. You have to understand the hierarchy and you have to understand the power structures. It is absolutely doable. One of the reasons I believe it's so hard for us to talk about these things is because the people who do this, the people who teach coaching and leadership, they don't have lived experience. They haven't gone through any of this. And so they're teaching from theory, right? They teach from the theory of you should be able to do this. You should be able to go and talk to HR. This should not be happening. Yes. It should not be happening. You should not be getting retaliated against. You should not be discriminated against. Legally, all of these things are wrong. In reality, it happens. In reality, as a woman, you're asked in an interview, do you have children? Do you plan on getting married? Legally, it's wrong, but in reality, it happens. So what do? So how does a med student navigate that hierarchy and structure? Understanding how it actually works and learning where the power levers are and how to talk to those people. It's a lot for me to go into right now, and that's exactly why the strategy exists and why we have a strategy room that teaches this. The reality is we don't understand it at all. Nobody teaches you the culture you're walking into. What you're told is everything is fair. There are laws to protect you. That is one of the biggest misconceptions of navigating the workplace, is that you have laws protecting you. There are legal protections in place against discrimination, against bias. It's ideal, but in reality, it is not real. In reality, your rights are violated all the time. There's bias, there's discrimination, there's sexism, there's racism, there's Islamophobia. You'll be in the middle of an interview and people will ask you, why are you wearing a hijab? Do you plan on having children? Are you married? Are you planning on getting married? What kind of schedule are you going to work? All illegal, but they happen in reality, right? So when you blindly rely on a system that's supposed to be there to protect you, and that system is just theoretical and not real, that's when people get upset, hurt, frustrated, angry, leave. I learned that the hard way. I learned that in so many different ways. When you're walking in with your eyes wide open, you're not navigating things blindly, right? Then you can come in and say, you know what? I don't have to do this. This is what I'm expecting. This is the reality. I know what the reality is. I can plan for it ahead of time. Okay. Or I'm already in it. This is what I expected. This is what's happening. This is my reality. This is how I deal with it. This is how I strategize for it. Okay. Strategy is learnable. It's a skill. But what we've done for hundreds of years is we just coped. We cope when we cope when we cope. We say, you know what? That's society. It takes a while to change. That is the biggest pushback I get. Oh, it takes time for society to change. Not if you know what you want and how to get it. If you know what it is that you want to accomplish. Like the program that I was in, the residency that I trained in, had no maternity leave policy. Women got pregnant and they got pushed out. They left because the program wasn't conducive. I was told almost on a daily basis that I was wasting my time, that I wasn't serious enough about being a surgeon, that I wasn't going to be productive, right? When I finished with 6 children, right? And a couple of years later, one of my colleagues called me and said, hey, the program that didn't have a maternity leave policy now has 7 weeks of paid maternity leave. 7 weeks. Systems can change. Systems can change if you know what it is that you want and you know how to protect yourself. They can try and push you out as much as they want, but if you know what it takes to get through that system and what they can hold against you and what they can't hold against you, you can survive any system. You can thrive in any system. Okay, I'm going to leave you with this. If you're a woman in medicine, you don't need more discipline. You don't need time management. You don't need inspiration or motivation. You already have all of that. What you need is to understand that the systems that you're walking into are hierarchical, are hostile sometimes, are not conducive to accommodating your values. If you want to have children, if you want to be present for your children, if you don't want to be burned out 24/7, you have to be able to navigate knowing that it's not designed for you. It's not going to accommodate you. It's not going to give you the flexibility that you need. What you need is knowing that going in, it's not going to be good for you. It's not going to give you what it is that you want. How do you get what you want out of it? I'm in surgery. It is the most male-dominated field there is. And everywhere I've ever been, they're like, oh, yeah, we're busy. I'm like, okay. Like, you know what? Whatever schedule you have doesn't work for me. This is what works for me. I work full time. I operate. I teach. I also am present. Why? Because that's what I wanted and I made it happen no matter where I was. Residency and fellowship, there's really not much you can do. That schedule is set. It's intensive training. You need that training to be able to take care of patients. But afterwards, after the training, the lifestyle that you make, the lifestyle that you create for yourself is completely up to you. And you can make it happen how you want it to happen, but you have to be able to know how to do it without the backlash and the retaliation. From a surgeon colleague, thank you so much for your advice and time. This is giving hope and motivation. You're absolutely welcome. I think we need to change the face of surgery. There's a video that I posted. I was operating with an all-female team. My chief resident, fourth-year resident, third-year resident, our anesthesiologist, our scrub tech, everybody in the room. It's beautiful. I'm completely 100% biased. I think surgery is the best field for mothers. I think trauma is the best field for mothers, but I could be biased. It doesn't have to be as hierarchical and as stressful and as hostile as it was. The residency that I went through, I wouldn't recommend anybody do that. Right? The training, the skills I got from it were amazing and I wouldn't trade it for anything, but the hostility is absolutely not needed. And so the way I teach how to go through it is you don't have to accept it. You don't have to just say, you know what, I'm just going to go through it because that's just how it is. No, you don't have to accept hostility. You don't have to tolerate it. You can speak up and you can stand up for yourself. Once you finish and you're joining a practice, there are a lot of times when I was in practice and people try to bully me into working the schedules, the hours that they were. I said, absolutely not. I love surgery. I love operating. I love my work. But at the same time, I want to be present for my kids who are growing up because I only have so many years of them. I'm not going to be in my deathbed hoping I took one more call. I'm not going to do that. So we have to be able to create the lifestyle that we want. If you have any more questions, send me a DM and we can get you booked on a strategy call.